Hey Eurovision fans, it's Tom coming to you from Shanghai, back for another Eurovision reaction video. Today we're going to talk about who could be the host for Eurovision 2023. So, let's kiki. As always, you can use a progress bar if you want to skip to a particular part of the video. I'll also leave timestamps in the description below. So on June 17th, the Eurovision Song Contest Twitter account posted this message, essentially saying that they've, with everything considered from the bid put forward by Ukraine in terms of the security practicalities of hosting the competition, unfortunately they've decided that it is not feasible for them to do. And essentially they're saying that because of this, they're now going to start discussions with the runner-up, which was obviously the UK, and their broadcaster, which is the BBC. So first of all, obviously this is really disappointing for Ukraine and for Ukrainians. Obviously winning was this huge, was like a really nice boost of morale in a very difficult time. Obviously it doesn't really solve any of their problems, but it's still nice to have. Very encouraging, this big show of support from the rest of Europe. And obviously Ukraine really wanted to host this. I think I would have loved them to have hosted as well. I really enjoyed 2017, which was the second Eurovision that I went to. I thought everything was really well organized. Obviously the show was not perfectly organized, but the actual final show was very good. All the Euro Club and Euro Party and everything was really great. Kiev was a really beautiful city to stay in, and everything was really great. So I really enjoyed going to Kiev for Eurovision 2017. And I was very much looking forward to going back, whether it was going to be Kiev or Lviv or Odessa or wherever they would have chosen if they weren't in the circumstances they were in. In terms of this security situation, I'm going to put up a post from Dr. Ellie, who's someone I follow on Twitter. She's talking just about all the kind of insurance ramifications and why this decision has been made. I'm just going to summarize all the points that she's making. All the equipment that's going, is it going to be able to be insured? This is very expensive equipment. Obviously that no insurer is going to give them insurance, and if they do, the prices are going to be extremely high. They can't do recce accounts now because all the cities would need to put forward their bids, and obviously the EBU, normally they go and visit the cities and see the infrastructure, etc. They can't go do that now because of safety concerns. And essentially what her main point is that it will probably end up being the Rotterdam type C situation, which is where we have live on tapes with no audience. So that's the security aspect of it. When I think of this situation from a Ukraine's perspective, and I don't want to put words in any Ukrainian's mouth, definitely, but if I try and think how I would feel if I was Ukrainian, there are so many Ukrainians right now who are displaced in Poland and Germany and Hungary and so many countries spread around Europe. I wonder how they would feel if they have still not been able to go home yet, but the government in Ukraine is organizing what is essentially a large party. It's obviously important for showing off cultural Ukraine's identity, being an act of defiance, but also if I imagine that I'm a Ukrainian who's fled Ukraine, sitting with my family who just wants to go home, and the government is organizing a big party, inviting people to come and sing songs, I kind of be thinking, can we not spend that money on other things that can kind of get me home? So I would obviously not all Ukrainians would think that way, but I imagine quite a lot do just want to go home and get back to their normal lives. On top of that, the amount of destruction that's happened in Ukraine, housing, infrastructure, manufacturing, just practical stuff like bridges, schools, hospitals, all these things need to be rebuilt. And again, I personally think that should take priority over hosting the competition. It is very expensive to host Eurovision. I think I saw a number, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's around £17 million to host it. Now obviously you can do it a little bit cheaper like Portugal did, where they had no LEDs, but generally I think it's in that kind of £15 million plus mark. Does give you a boost in tourism. I actually heard, where was I heard last night that, I remember William from WeWeBlog saying that Norway reported that after they hosted in 2009, they had an increase in tourism 2-3-fold from certain countries. So there is a knock-on positive effect for tourism, but that money is going into different sectors. So the entertainment sector is paying for it, and the tourism sector is benefiting from it. So it's not exactly like you're spending money and then getting it back in another form. It's indirectly going to someone else. So yeah, I understand the situation. I think it's very sad. Obviously, it's always sad when a country wins but then isn't able to host. It hasn't happened in a long time. The last time that someone stepped in to host for another country was 1980. So it hasn't happened in 42 years, so it really is rare. That's when Netherlands stepped in to host for Israel. I think that was because they didn't want to host back-to-back, because they won in 78 and in 79. Israel win every 20 years, I remember that. They won in 78 and 98 and 2018, and they're next due to win in 2030, 2038. So yeah, this is not something that happens often, so it's obviously very, very, very disappointing. On top of that, like, Putin is an absolute psychopath, and he would 100% definitely not let things go normally. There is no incentive for him not to do that. You know, there's full flat out war right now with Ukraine. Obviously the situation is much more escalated than it was in 2017. Plus, on top of that, things are a little bit more openly confrontational between him and the West. So all he has to do is on semi-final night or grand final night just threaten to do a missile strike on whatever city is the host. Like, that alone is enough to completely disrupt everything, just put a lot of fear in the performers' arts, making not a lot of people want to go, kind of just ruin the whole thing for Ukrainians, especially if they put all this money in and host, and then there's a threat of a missile strike, and then, like, what can you do about that? You can't go forward with a competition on such a grand public scale when there is such a security threat in place. So yeah, I think it's extremely sad, but I definitely see the logical process behind the decision. There are a couple of people in Ukraine. I know the Minister for Culture is still arguing it, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. In any case, now it's come to the fact that the BBC are likely to have been asked to host. So the other countries is offered to help: Switzerland, Sweden, Spain, Italy, Netherlands as well. All those countries are no longer on the table. It's just going to be the BBC. I'm going to go to another thread from Twitter. Twitter has a lot of useful information if you're willing to troll through all the toxic waste. So here's another thread. It's showing all the potential hosts. So first on the list, we've got Birmingham. Problem with Birmingham is Birmingham hosted in 1998. So they have already hosted recently. So I don't think that's going to happen. They've also got, they've got 2 arenas actually to choose from. They've got the Resorts World Arena as well. In Leeds, we have the First Direct Arena, which has a capacity of 14,000. Now, I've been to Leeds. I was only on the suburbs. It was very, very pretty, but BBC are making a big thing about wanting to focus more outside of London. They get a lot of criticism from focusing too much on England and too much on London in terms of like where things are hosted. You know, the Olympics was there, the Athletics World Championships were there in 2017. So I think that's something that BBC is very conscious about, and they have focused more of their base, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've focused more of their base now up in Salford and Manchester. They've got a new BBC base there. I think there's a BBC base in Glasgow as well. They're definitely trying to emphasize outside of London, develop the country more. UK really is one of those countries where the capital is kind of like over focused on too much. Like, the population of London is more than double the second city, which is a problem that Ireland has as well. So yeah, Leeds definitely fits that criteria of being more northern up. In case you don't know, Leeds and Manchester are kind of in the middle of England. Liverpool is on this list as well. Now, I have to admit, I haven't heard anyone talking about Liverpool. I don't think there's much buzz about it, so I would be kind of surprised. This this picture of this arena looks like a big Marks and Spencer's to me. It's called the Marks and Spencer's Bank Arena, so not just my fault that it looks like that, but it really does look like a gigantic Marks and Spencer's, which is definitely not my I suppose it's good for quicker beer service and alcohol service. Eurovision does have a reputation for having very, very slow beer service. In case you have never been before, my God, in Portugal, it was like a 45-minute wait to get a beer. It was really, really, really painful. Another one here with the O2 Arena in London. Again, for that reason, I don't think the BBC wants to be focused on London anymore. I'd be really surprised if London does get it. Obviously, London, in terms of infrastructure and accommodation and reputation and all kind of entertainment and that type of thing, is definitely the front runner. It has by far the most tourists, which is indicative of the fact of all those things together. Accessibility, things that people want to see, etc. So it definitely has that strength. We've also got the OVO Arena in Wembley. Manchester, now we have the AO Arena, which I believe is a new one, because I remember someone telling me that there was a new arena being built in Manchester. That's got a capacity of 21,000, which is huge. Not the greatest picture here. It does look a bit, it's not one of those very like beautiful graphically intended one. It's interesting to look at as well in this thread the amount of hearts that each post has, and actually go through and tell you which ones were the top 3, which are kind of showing where some of the fandom wanted to be. So yeah, Manchester definitely a possibility. Manchester again is further up north. It's got that BBC centre, which is very easy. It's obviously going to save on costs if you can have people doing a short distance from work to there in terms of transporting equipment and transporting staff and just managing all the logistics of it. accommodation there. There's plenty of accommodation. Manchester has a very vibrant gay scene. I would guess that it's second in the odds for me personally. Actually, I'm going to go to the odds later because there are actually bookmakers odds for who is going to win the hosting duty. Newcastle is another one. The Utilisha Arena. Did we have another Utilisha? Yeah, we did. Bloody hell, they need to come up with better. That's the same name as the one in Birmingham. So Newcastle, yeah, that capacity, 11.4 thousand, is a little bit on the small side. You know, every once in a while we can have a small one. Tel Aviv, I think, was only around 10 or so thousand. I really noticed that when I was in the actual arena, it did feel much, much significantly smaller than, for example, Stockholm did. That was just a difficulty that Tel Aviv had, is that they didn't have a massive venue. And Nottingham Motorpoint Arena, I haven't heard anyone talking about Nottingham. I'd be very surprised at that, also with that capacity of 10,000. Sheffield, 13.6 thousand. Sheffield doesn't have the best reputation. I've been to Sheffield. I went there for a couple of tournaments. Yeah, it's a reputation as like an industrial town that is slightly more on the down scale. So they might want to like liven it up by going there. But yeah, it's not the prettiest part of England, and I do think there's an element of wanting to show off the UK in the best capacity. They also need to take into consideration, is there any city that has a particular connection with Ukrainians? Is there a big Ukrainian ex-population, or any other sort of like manufacturing or other political connections, because that will definitely strengthen any of these cities' bids. Now Belfast, the SSE Arena, this is interesting. It's only got a capacity of 10.8 thousand, and I have to admit, I don't know if the accommodation in Belfast is going to be massively huge. I have been to Belfast. It is very lovely. They've got the Titanic Museum there. Obviously for me, Belfast is incredibly convenient. I can drive from Dublin to Belfast in around 3 hours, so I would kind of love that. But yeah, I don't know how practical that is in terms of some of the infrastructure. So the main BBC bases in the UK are in Salford, which is essentially Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, Glasgow, and obviously London. So those 6 would be the most obvious. They really do have the BBC has bases everywhere, but I can't find anywhere that tells me the size of them. Well, let's just do it together. There's 2 possible Scottish bids, and Nicola Sturgeon actually came forward and said that she wanted to host. She's very much behind this. We have the OVO Hydro Arena in Glasgow, which is 14.3 thousand, which is a good number. Plus, if you've seen the Eurovision movie, this is where that was filmed. I think the outside of the OVO Arena was filmed for the scenes for that, even though in the story the city was in Edinburgh. So there's that kind of like cute narrative. Plus, in case you aren't aware of British politics, there was an independence referendum. I can't remember when it was. I think it was 2014 or 15 or something like that, where Scotland were looking for independence, and that was voted down no, 55 to 45%. So it was pretty close. And one of the big policies for a lot of Scottish politicians is having a second referendum, which has the nickname Indie Ref 2. If the England and some of the British politicians wanted to placate Scotland, one of the reasons that Scotland wants to leave is that they feel that there's too much emphasis, again, on England and on London. Choosing Scotland for Eurovision would be a useful political move for some of the political parties, and we know in particular that the Tories in the UK are very susceptible to making those type of placative or placational, whatever the adjective for placate is, decisions. So yeah, not impossible. But yeah, we have Glasgow, which has the OVO in it. We've also got Aberdeen, which I have to admit, I don't know as much about Aberdeen. I don't know what the accommodation will be like. I do know Glasgow is a very big city and it's very close to Edinburgh as well. Whereas Aberdeen is kind of up in the, where this is getting flipped, isn't it? Whereas Aberdeen is kind of up in the northeast coast, so it's a little bit more isolated. Whereas if you're in Glasgow, it's very, very easy to get to Edinburgh. It's only around an hour on the train. And then last but not least is Cardiff for the Principality Stadium. So they're saying that's where a lot of rugby matches, if you follow rugby, they're saying they've got a capacity of 73,000, but they're saying they're going to close the roof for it. Now that is something that I believe is unprecedented. Correct me if I'm wrong. Have we ever had a closed roof Eurovision before? I would wonder what the acoustics would be like on that. I know that they do have concerts in it before. I do believe when they have concerts, they kind of cut it, not in half, but they don't do it so it's the whole stadium. So maybe they might do that. But yeah, that would be very interesting. My entire maternal side of my family are Welsh. So for me, it's very, very practical because I've got accommodation sorted. I can stay in 10 different places. So yeah, I would love that. And I would also love, again, this fulfills the BBC's desire to be outside of London, a country within the United Kingdom. So that would definitely have that appeal. If we look at the likes from the community on these posts, by far the most popular one is Glasgow with 289 likes at this point in time. Second is the O2 Arena in London with 125, under half of what Glasgow has. and third place is Manchester with 110. In terms of hosts, I put forward on Twitter who I would like to host. I think Rylan would be really, really fun. I'm a big fan of Rylan. He's a big Eurovision fan. He's been on Eurovision sides a couple of times. AJ Adodu is the lady who did the reading out the votes for the UK this year. She's from Salford. I believe she's from Salford or near about. So that would be great in terms of representation for the north of England. In my Dream Team post, I also mentioned Sergei Pritula, but someone told me that apparently he has no interest in hosting Eurovision. And then I was trying to find a Ukrainian girl, and I couldn't think who. Mila Kunis was a name that was mentioned, but Mila Kunis speaks Russian, not Ukrainian, which I know would not be very popular. Plus, I don't know if she has any connection with the competition, really. It might feel a little bit artificial to bring her in. She's brilliant, though. I absolutely love her. She did an interview with Howard Stern, which she's like the most down-to-earth, cool person. So I would love her to do it, but it'd probably be a little bit of a stretch. So I was trying to think of another Ukrainian woman. I just picked Jamala because that was a Ukrainian woman who has a connection with the competition and I know speaks decent English. She would have to improve her English, but she does seem like quite a divisive character. But yeah, in terms of the host, I think a kind of 2-2 split will kind of make sense. I definitely think that there should be the same amount or more Ukrainian hosts. I think one Ukrainian host with 2 Brits might seem a little bit minimal, like they've done the absolute bare bones to include Ukraine. So I think 2-2 makes the most sense. 2 girls, 2 boys. We had 4 hosts in Israel. I thought it was fine. No problems for me. You just give them all different jobs. Maybe allocate that 1-on-1 from each of the pairings is like a main host. Other names going around. I know there's a campaign not to have James Corden. People don't want him. Who else was a lot of people are talking about Graham Norton. Now Graham Norton is a great host. Keep in mind, Graham Norton has his own talk show, so he's very, very comfortable in front of the camera. He's very, very fun. He did host Eurovision Decides, I think, as well. So yeah, he really knows what he's doing. Yeah, he's definitely going to be one of the front runners. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Graham Norton. He's originally from Cork in Ireland. Rylan might actually be better in the green room interviewing people. He's got that real charming personality about him. And then I've seen a lot of people mentioning Alison Hammond, who also interestingly started her career off in reality TV. She was a contestant on season 3 of Big Brother UK way back in like 2000 or something like that. In terms of the content of the show, I think they're definitely going to have a lot of inclusivity of Ukraine. I think the theme of it will be building bridges, like being united, this UK and Ukraine working together. I think it's very, very obvious that that's what they're going to pick. And I think that the BBC are going to be able to do that in a respectful and sensitive way. I would imagine that some of the interval acts will be either a mix or they'll kind of split between British ones and Ukrainian ones. That's very, very obvious. It's obvious as well in the final that the interval act will have like a big emphasis, a very, very strong message about Ukrainian identity. I have a lot of faith that the BBC are going to be able to do that well. They suck at picking Eurovision songs, but generally I think the BBC are actually very respectable at producing things. Okay, and finally, some people have already put up some potential logos. So here is one of the potential logos that I quite like. It's got the half Ukrainian and half UK flag. I know some people are flag purists and they don't want the flags to be mixed that way, but I quite like that half and half. Another one I saw that I retweeted on my account was this one. It's the Union Jack shape over the Ukrainian flag. I think this is really, really clever. It looks really, really cool and very arty as well, because I do feel like the British always want to put like that kind of artistic style. Like their London 2020 logo was very artistic, and this logo that Adrenalina has posted as well, United Through Music, really, really beautiful. Some of the graphic designing on the Eurovision fandom on Twitter is really, really impressive. Okay, finally, let's have a look at the odds and see. So let's flash up the odds and we can see Glasgow is a big favorite right now. There's only 2 markets who are looking at this, so not a huge amount of scope, but both of them have put Glasgow as the heavy favorite with a 36% chance. London in second. I have to admit, for me, London is their main backup plan. We did have a message from the Mayor Khan saying that he has expressed interest, but I feel that they would look at London as a backup in case anything went wrong. They know that very quickly and easily they can do one in London. Birmingham third, again, I'd be surprised because Birmingham hosted last in 98. With so many potential host cities, it doesn't make sense for me for them to repeat a host city. And then Manchester in fourth with 9%, and then everyone else kind of drops off. So yeah, for me, those would be the main ones. I would actually say it's between Glasgow and Manchester, with London being a very stable and secure backup, and then the kind of like wild cards being Cardiff and Leeds. Keep in mind, Leeds is the City of Culture 2023 in the UK, so that would kind of fit perfectly for them to host in a year of culture. Okay, so that's what I think about Ukraine hosting. Again, very sad that they can't host. also what I think about where the host city could be, who the hosts are, and what the logo could be, and what the theme of the show might be. Let me know who you think. Do you have any juicy, delicious BBC gossip about who might be hosting? Please leave it in the comment section down below. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in another Eurovision reaction video very soon. Goodbye.